kind of talking a little bit about what mindfulness is. So really what mindfulness is paying attention to our lives moment by moment on purpose in a certain way, and most importantly, without judgment. And this is a definition that was given by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is really the modern day founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, which this is what we're going to be talking about today for our foundation. So what I'd like you to do is really think about that statement. We're going to tune in intentionally. We're going to experience our emotions and our feelings. And what I'd like you to do is just take a moment in the chat and just kind of let me know what sensations, what feelings does that bring up for you? For some, it might be pleasant, a forced slowing down, a sense of quiet. And peace. So it seems though that this group is in a very good place. And sometimes when we decide that we're going to check into our emotions, it is when we're in a more mindful and intentional place. But imagine yourself in the scurry of the day when demands are piling up on you. And if you were to answer that question then, some might get a sense of dread almost, or anxiety about, I'm not feeling so good in here, and the last thing I want to do is get more in touch with how I'm feeling. So let's keep this going on here. When we think about mindfulness, what we do know is that our society is at its recorded highest levels of stress, especially post-pandemic. So what we do know about mindfulness also is that there are many scientific studies that are now shown based on MRI data, how different areas of the brain are reacting to stimulus, to emotional impact. We do know that mindfulness actually helps change the structure of the brain. And what we're doing is we are actually retraining our brain. We're actually reforming our brain. We're creating what's called neural pathways. And that's how your brain's centers connect with each other, how they talk, the electrical signals that are sent between them to communicate messages, feelings, sensations, and so on. So how does it work? Well, in part, it helps people recognize their emotions and their experiences, and rather than turn to avoidance, such as binge eating or binge watching Netflix. But what we also know is that our brain does have the capacity to change. The physical structure of our brain can change. You know, everyone's heard that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you certainly can. So more than 2,000 years later, since mindfulness was first introduced, it's now coming back into our society. And I think what you're going to find is it's something that's very, very simple to incorporate. You can do it and have a major impact within minutes to almost seconds. So what we know is that about 16% of the population has talked about being overstressed. A lot of that is due to post-COVID. Over 20% of Americans actually consider skipping the doctor because they know that part of the questionnaire that they're going to get is what is your stress level like? And that's now a standard question that's asked at your, physician's office, which is something that's very different. That's not been a focus. So I'm just going to click here through our slides. But why do we need it? Well, one of the reasons we need it is because our stress impacts all areas of our body. And don't get me wrong, stress is not all negative. Stress can help us get out of a place of danger. And that's really how our bodies have evolved. Back in many millennia ago, we had developed this brain system to react if there was a saber-toothed tiger chasing us down. We don't have time to think, oh, I need to get out of the way or I'm going to become its next meal. We just move. And as our bodies have evolved over time, we still have that very primitive reactivity to our body. Bad stress, however, has negative impacts. When we have a stress reaction, this is how it can manifest in our body. Sometimes we'll have headaches. We'll maybe start in the back of the neck with tension headaches. I know a lot of people just feel that tension right in the back of their neck there. It could be a tightness in your chest. You just might feel exhausted and fatigued. A change in your sex drive. You might feel a churning in your stomach. Your appetite might be waning, or your appetite might be overstimulated. Might have a lot of difficulty getting to sleep. But that manifests on our mood by showing out to others that we appear to be anxious or we're restless. If we're fatigued and we're not really engaged in the moment, it could also seem as though we're not motivated. We're feeling overwhelmed. If somebody comes up and wants to speak with you and they can just sense by the look on your face that you're not present or you can't take in one additional thing. We might also, present with sadness or depression. And then on our behavior, we might have angry outbursts when that's not our go-to personality. We might use drug or alcohol or other tools to withdraw from the situation. We might use tobacco. If you are someone who exercises, you might find yourself exercising less often. But how does it change us? Well, according to studies, and there are many studies, that the mindfulness provides beneficial effects on our body, including many different domains of our brain. It helps cognitively, it helps improve our memory. So we have a left brain and we have a right brain. And in between, there's this cortex. And what happens is if in our thinking days, where we're spending so much of our time, we're mostly in our left brain, kind of in our analytical space. Our right brain is more connected with artistic expression, with emotional expression, with wisdom. And what happens is there's not a lot of crossover between those two. We seem to spend a whole lot of time in our left brain. What the Wharton Neuroscience Center has identified is it actually helps to strengthen that connection between our left and our right brain. And conversely, that helps to improve our memory, our response system. And it really does, again, help to restructure our brain, helps us concentrate, and most importantly, it helps us start to regulate our emotions and our reactions to that. Think about being on the road and a driver cuts you off. What might your go-to reaction be? Might be one of anger, frustration, of fear. You might sense that metallic taste in your mouth from having an adrenaline dump? Think about that. If we're aware of what our reactions are, if we start to put space between whatever the trigger is and whatever our reaction is, then that in-between space is when we can really be mindful of our response. So when we think about our emotional pathways, hold on just a moment here. We think about our emotional pathways. We think that our stress response begins in our mind. In our mind, we're actually creating what the story is. Something might happen. Whatever happens, whatever situation, it's neutral until we apply our own emotions and our own feelings to it. So stress reactivity begins in the mind. It's our perception of and interpretation of the events, the meaning that we make consciously, that determines those thoughts and those feelings and the behaviors. The emotions are really the body's primal response, which really originates in a matter of seconds. It's not a conscious response. It's mostly unconscious. And it's coming from the limbic center of the brain, or the amygdala. And that's kind of our primitive brain. Then that sends information to our prefrontal cortex, which is our more advanced brain, which is the one for higher reasoning and thinking and meaning making and planning. Now, our emotions are what generates our feelings. They're different. Emotions and feelings are not the same. They're different. Emotions generate feelings. But what interprets that is our thoughts, our meaning to what has happened. That could be triggered based on our memories, could be on our subjective labeling of the experience. It might be that an example would be that somebody sees a snake, or they might see a dog, and maybe in their childhood they were bitten by a dog and they become very fearful. But in their body, the emotional response would be their heartbeat would start to get faster, their muscles might tense up, they might get butterflies in their stomach, and then their mind, their conscious mind, would label that emotion as fear, that feeling is fear, is projecting in the body. And then our moods are our moods are the holder of our emotions and our feelings, and that can last over a period of time. Sometimes we began to really connect and identify so strongly with our emotions that we take it in as part of who we are. So it might be my father could be quite cantankerous, and we would tell him that all of the time. And he started to take that on. He actually wore it as a badge of honor, but then that really became part of his personality. And so if somebody, might say to you, gosh, you seem always sad, you always seem really down or always concerned or really anxious. Pretty soon we might say, oh, I'm having an anxiety issue, or I'm just naturally anxious, or I'm just naturally sad. So think about that. That seems to be a constant companion with us, the emotion, which triggers into the feelings. But remember, what's causing all of that is our thoughts, and we are not our thoughts. And we're not our emotions. While our emotions are natural reactions, and labeling the emotions and transferring them into feeling is what causes the discomfort. So there's times when an emotion might arise and it causes painful feelings, and then we layer on more difficult feelings such as blame or shame. So something might happen at work or in your personal life, and you didn't perform or you didn't do something to your highest standards, which then triggers you experience the emotion of disappointment, but then you start to label that. You might label that with shame or a feeling of inadequacy. So the first step is helping to identify or start to label what our experience and our emotion is for what it is. You might just recognize, I'm feeling sad. As we learn to cultivate our resources, then we start to learn to manage our emotions. That's when we start to learn to bring the space in between the trigger and our response. And mindfulness is right in between that point. What might seem uncomfortable to people is that when we talk about difficult emotions, it's leaning into them. Leaning into something that we want to avoid. That seems counterintuitive because many times our automated response is to distract. My favorite place to go is my denial den because it's comforting and nothing bad ever happens there. But also know that our emotions and our feelings have something to teach us, something that we can grow from. So before we begin our next exercise, what I'd like you to do is just enter into the chat. What is your most challenging emotion? And what feeling does that emotion bring up into you? Your most challenging emotion. Fear, uncertainty, fear and anxiety, disappointment, sadness, anger, fear. Those are extremely difficult emotions, which can trigger a number of different feelings within us. Each one of those emotions can have a cascade of how does that manifest in our body? How does that manifest in feeling in our body? What is that doing to us internally? And then how are we expressing that to those we love? So what I'd like to do is just take us on a little exercise. As we think about these difficult emotions, I want you to just bring to mind what that might be for you. And notice if you can find in your body where you feel the feeling of that emotion. Sometimes it might be an elevated heart rate. You might find that there's a dryness in your mouth. And many times that's your body's trigger to let you know it's about to have a stress response. And when your body has a stress response that's not a good response, it's dumping many hormones and chemicals in your body that were meant for you to run and outrun the saber-toothed tiger. But you're not going to get up from your chair and run away from these difficult emotions. So we have to figure out a way to process those emotions in a very healthy way. So I'd like you to just take a moment and sit comfortably in your chair. You can close your eyes if it's safe. You can just leave them slightly open and a downcast gaze. We're going to start by listening to the sounds around you. Just relax and allow your experience of the sounds to come and go. Just let the sounds wash through you. And now bring your body fully into focus. Feel the weight sitting on your chair. Feel the earth supporting you. And now see if you can notice the space around you. There is always space around you. See if you can feel any sensation of coolness or warmth within that space that surrounds you. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath. As you sit fully supported and safe, just feel the air moving in and out. And notice any sensations, such as the coolness of the air, and as you sit with your breath, know that the thoughts will come in. It might be about the past, might be about the future. It's okay. Grant yourself the grace to just allow the thoughts to float by. And take a deep inhale through your nose, feeling your chest fill, and gently let the air seep out of your mouth, like the deflating of a balloon. Feeling any stress, go with it. Moving out beyond your area of space. Now gently wiggle your fingers and your toes. When you're comfortable, you can open your eyes and rejoin. So how long in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute, how long did that feel? Did that exercise feel like we were in that for?
Five minutes, maybe?
5 minutes, okay.
Yeah, it seemed longer than I think it really was. It was a nice kind of quiet time.
Mm-hmm. It was actually under 2 minutes. So
Wow.
when we think about those difficult emotions that you're experiencing, it might be a frustration at work, it might be a frustration at home, and might be something that happens in public, those deep emotions that come up. I think we can all agree that if we're really mindful and we make this intention, we can step away for 2 minutes. We can step away into a stall of a bathroom, around the corner, and just take those breaths. Feel the sensation come to your senses by engaging your senses, your hearing, your feeling, your smelling, your tasting. They're always with you. That helps bring us back into our body and takes us out of our racing thoughts, which is what started to create the emotions and triggered the feeling in the first place. So now what I'd like to do is talk about our hearts. So one of the ways that we can really start to become connected with our hearts is by intentionally activating our hearts, and I'm going to get into this in a moment, is made up of electromagnetic, as you can see on the slide there. There's electromagnetic waves that come out, and the science is proving that there's many different techniques and imagery that they can now improve, that everybody has an electromagnetic field. And our heart is the center of that. So right now we're going to just take a moment and we're going to activate our heart. And this is a great exercise to do when you first get out of bed in the morning. You might have had a sleepless night, or you might have gone to bed with a heavy thought on your mind. But this is a great way to kind of reset your heart with an intention of choosing a heart quality that makes you feel better. So I want you to bring to mind, and it might be helpful if you just sit and close your eyes again. But think of a heart quality that makes you feel better. It might be love or appreciation. It might be compassion that you show for others or others show to you. It might be a simple kindness or an ease. It might be joy. Just with your eyes closed, see if you can find that feeling in your memory. And notice that in your heart center. For me, mine is joy. And it's easy for me to bring to mind the event that made me have that emotion. And I feel those feelings in my body. And I almost feel a warmth around my heart when I think about that. So choose your emotion. You might want to picture that emotion in words or in colors, kind of right in front of you. And as you think about that, I want you to envision it growing bigger. And it's starting to fill the space around you. whether it be love, compassion, empathy. Just feel it in the center of your heart, expanding outward. Envision that emotion swirling around you and expanding outside of your heart area. You should feel it go warmer. It starts to encompass your whole chest area, up your neck, to your face, to the top of your head. Just feel it circle all the way down your body to your feet until you're encased in this joyful emotion that's radiating from your heart. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and just return back to the space. And doing that only takes a few moments in the morning. And it really can help to project your feelings for the day in a more positive way. But how can we do this? Well, what scientists are finding out, and specifically through HeartMath Institute, who has started doing studies decades ago, the heart is actually an information processing system. So the same as we have, our brain has a central nervous system, the heart itself has a central nervous system. It's called a complex nervous system. It's also called the heart brain. Now, many times we might think a thought generates a feeling in our heart, but studies have shown that it's the opposite. The heart produces this feeling, which then sends a signal to our brain to help us interpret that. So when we think of those strong emotions that I asked you to call up, where did you feel those the most? Most likely you weren't feeling those in your mind, but you were feeling those in your heart. The way that our heart communicates with our brain and body is in 4 different ways: and neurological, biochemical through a release of hormones, biophysical, which is part of that pulse wave, and electromagnetic communications. Now, I think that we can all call up a time in our lives when we happen to walk into a room, and you might have walked in on an argument, but you can almost feel the tension in the air. The generation of that is from the anxiety, the emotion from so many people in the room, or maybe it's one individual, but they're experiencing this strong emotion and it's impacting their electromagnetic waves, which in turn impacts you. So sometimes you might find that you're in a delightful mood and you go home to your partner and your partner's had an awful drive home, and they start sharing how difficult their day was, and you're trying to get a word in edgewise, but they keep spiraling and talking about this challenge built into this challenge, which built into this challenge. And pretty soon you feel your joyfulness kind of start to decline to match the same as theirs. So the invitation that we just did to activate our heart field, know that you're able to pull yourself back out of that. Just take a step out, reactivate your heart sense into the space that you want to be. When we bring intentional thought to this area of our body, it actually creates physiological changes within our body systems. And just as though our brain can go through a rewiring and our brain structure can change through neuroplasticity, scientists are also learning that our emotions, now think of this, our emotions can actually create cardioplasticity, so it can change the physical structure of our heart. So what I'd like to do now is to do another exercise to help us create and connect to our heart. So one easy way for us to give comfort to ourselves is to give a supportive touch, especially in the times of COVID, especially for those of us who were huggers before COVID. Touch is something that we are severely missing. Studies were done even prior to COVID to those in nursing homes who were lonely and did not have somebody, whether it be in their family system or friends, or a compassionate touch, which is different than receiving clinical care. A compassionate touch is much different. Now they can go hand in hand, but you can certainly have clinical care without having compassionate touch, unfortunately. But scientists identified this as being skin hunger. So touch actually activates the care system in the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps us feel calm, and it helps us start to have a release of those chemicals of endorphins that make us feel happy and safe, and dopamine, which makes us feel comforted and safe. Think of your mother, giving you a hug, or your loved one. Sometimes you might have even noticed, I started to notice this with many of my family members and my friends during the pandemic. Instead of hugging, we were keeping our 6 feet, distance, but we would always put our hand over our heart, like I'm sending my love to you, I'm sending my love to you. But actually what we're finding out is that actually creates a change in your own body. So I'd like you to do that right now. I'd like you to just take a moment and put your hand over your heart. When you're having a difficult time or a difficult emotion, just know that this is something very simple and effective that you can do. Your body doesn't know the difference, whether it's your hand on your heart or somebody hugging you. It's still going to release those same positive hormones, which you're going to get the benefits from that. Our skin is a very sensitive organ. Oxytocin is released. It provides us that security. It helps us soothe distressing emotions. It also calms our cardiovascular stress. So what I'd like you to do is join me in another exercise. So I want you to just take a moment, again, taking a breath and becoming present in the moment. And then I'd like you to put your hand on your heart. Just take 2 deep breaths in and out. Releasing the stress. Another deep breath in and out. I'd like you to leave your hand there and just notice the heat from your palm on your chest. You might feel the sensation of your heart beating through your palm. Just notice that. Feel the natural rising and falling of your chest. And in times where you're feeling those very strong emotions, it's good to add to this practice the affirmation, I am loved, I am safe. Just breathing in that knowledge, knowing that you are loved and you are safe. And one more deep breath in. Allowing any residual stress to release slowly through your mouth as you feel yourself come back to the space. Another way to connect and help process our emotions is through writing. And I'm hoping that everybody has a pen and a paper, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. But once again, there's a lot of science to journaling. The brain accomplishes the tasks by activating those neurons. We talked about those neural pathways, and it starts to send signals to different parts of the brain. And these signals are translated through our thoughts and our actions. When you start to write by hand, you're not only activating the motor cortex that makes your hand physically write, but also the motor planning aspects of your prefrontal cortex, which is your higher thinking brain, to help you visualize the letters in your mind, which then kicks in the language networks in the central and temporal lobes. So it starts to work in all different areas of the brain. So putting our physical sensations and words to paper is very cathartic. Now, some may choose to type on a keyboard, and that's effective as well, but not as much as doing the actual handwriting. So really what journaling is just writing down your thoughts. You might start with just writing down, I have no thoughts, or I think this is silly. I haven't had a diary since I was 8 years old, and I stopped keeping one because my brother stole it. Might be a whole sort of things that are going through your mind. But if you're struggling with these really strong emotions that we've talked about and you've identified for yourself, journaling can truly help you process through them. It's like when you talk to a best friend or a confidant. You know, many times if you think back on those times when you feel most helped, chances are your friend or your confidant didn't really say anything. They gave you that space of active listening and held that place for you to be able to process it safely, what was going on. Journaling will also help you prioritize your goals, helps you keep control of your symptoms, helps you identify your fears and concerns. And a big part of mindfulness is really about labeling, is about being curious about what is going on in our body, what is going on in our mind. It's almost, again, like you're stepping away from, you're starting to separate yourself from your emotions, from those difficult feelings. And by doing so, in that space in between is where you can start to identify, oh, this is the trigger that happened. The trigger is neutral. My emotion about this is, and you label the emotion. My feelings about this is, and you label your feelings. And by doing this, you start to activate your prefrontal cortex and take away a lot of the power from your limbic system, which is just the reactive. And once we get into that reactive, that's very easy. That could put us into a spinning of thoughts, and we start to worry about the future, and we start to ruminate about the past. And next thing you know, we're really battling either depression or anxiety. And anxiety was one that I saw many of you were battling with, and that's very common. So once you have identified through your journaling, then you can start to take action on that. It gives you a sense of control. And just think about this. Everything that you need is within you. Every single one of us. All we need is within us. If we're having difficulties, tap into our thoughts, change our thoughts. So what I'd like to do now is take you through a brief exercise. And this is a meditation by Teri. And I neglected to say that the prior meditation for checking in with our heart, that was by Sharon Salzberg. And we can send out the references. They're two of the mindfulness leaders in today's time. So if you have your pen and paper, this meditation is going to help us listen to our hearts, to really be intimate with the state of our hearts, and help us get in touch with our deepest longing or aspirations. You might make a subtle change to your posture so that you feel more awake and alert and at ease. And we're going to start with just some conscious breathing. Inhaling deeply to a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a slow out breath, letting go, letting go, letting go. Again, a nice, deep, full breath in. Feeling your chest and your lungs. With the out breath, a soft breath, slow, releasing any tension or tightness. And now we're going to allow our breath to just resume its natural rhythm. Can let go of any unnecessary stress or tightness. Now bring your attention to your heart, sensing that you can breathe in and out of your heart, connecting in a very physical way. Now imagine that you're walking down a path. It could be down a mountain, through the woods, by a stream, by the hills. And know that soon you'll be walking around a bend, and what you will see or hear or feel will somehow express the current state of your heart. Again, feeling the area of your heart, breathing, present. Now imagine going around that bend. And just see if there's an image that reflects the state of your heart right now at this junction in your life. Might be a particular landscape, an animal, a tree. Might be a certain type of weather, or colors, or sounds, or words, or even music. What is the feeling tone of your heart? Deepen your attention to anything that your heart wants to tell you. Let it communicate how it's experiencing life. Tap into what your heart most longs for. What is it that you most want to be experiencing or expressing? Sensing what matters most. If you were at the end of your life looking back, what would matter most about how you lived this juncture of your life? Now, in some energetic way, bowing or honoring, whatever you are, noticing and trusting that you can continue to listen and be informed by your heart. I'd like you to just take one moment and write down a few words about the state of your heart and what it told you. And as you have that thought, I'd like to end today's session with the reflection that all beings everywhere may realize their essence as living awareness, that all beings might live from this loving awareness, and that there be a growing expression of peace and compassion that all beings everywhere experience, especially each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teri. What an enlightenment this afternoon as the sun is shining out and our hearts are full and centered and calm. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Teri has a few moments for some questions and answers. If there is anyone that would like to ask Teri anything particular, you can add it into the chat or unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi, Teri. Thank you so much for this. It was really wonderful. In the section of this hour, when you were talking about touch, you talked about skin hunger and that kind of thing. And you mentioned that touch activates, and I missed that. What does touch activate within us other than a good feeling? But there's something I think felt, I don't know, going on.
So touch is our skin is our largest organ in our body, and touch activates the sensations, which then activates parts of our brain, which will release the endorphins, the oxytocin, those good chemicals that we want flowing throughout our body.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have time for one more question. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
I think this question might be more for Jennifer. Are these sessions open to anyone?
Good question, and thank you for asking. Yes, this is Angela Answers. This is our first segment of Angela Answers, and starting in June, we will be having these every third Wednesday at 1 p.m. They are open to anyone that's is interested in attending. We do a mass email, and this information is also available on our social media sites, as well as our website, which you can log on to at any point. And that would be angelahospice.org/events is where our events are listed. The next segment that we will have will be on June 15th at 1 p.m. The title of that segment is Caring for Someone with Dementia. It is being presented by Angela Hospice's Executive Director, Jamie Lalonde, who is also a dementia care educator. So yes, these sessions are open to anyone that's interested. If you would like more information, again, log on to our website at angelahospice.org/events, and that'll list the next one, as well as Zoom information that's also available on our social media. Teri, once again, I would like to thank you on behalf of the entire team of Angela Hospice. You're a valued member for us here, and we are so thankful that we can share your talent and your time with others outside of our organization. And to everyone attending, thank you. As mentioned, this is Angela Answers, and we will be back on June 15th with Jamie Lalonde, who will be speaking about caring for someone with dementia. You can always log on to our website at angelahospice.org. Take a look at our events. Upcoming golf outing is on June 13th, and we have a raffle that's being conducted right now through June 13th. Again, these are all posted on our event sites and our website, and our social media has very up-to-date information that you can always take a look at. Again, thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon. And Teri, thanks again, folks. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.